Robert Landau has delivered over 3,200 keynote and seminar experiences in over 20 countries. He's published 5 books. He's a results-oriented certified life coach that works with individuals and businesses to help facilitate positive experiences and productive change. His mission is to help people remember what they think they've forgotten. Who needs help? Right? That they have the will and the intent, the power to create the life they want in and out of the office. All they have to do is do it. He provides them with the tools to get there in an energetic, fun, and interactive way that is totally unique and slightly out of the box. So I can't wait. Please help me welcome Mr. Robert Landau.
I'll take that. Well, thank you. Good afternoon. Now, come on. I know you guys can do better than that. Give me a really powerful, positive good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure. Take care, and I hope to see you soon. First of all, before I go any further, I would like to extend a sincere and profound thanks to Bruce and Brandy and all of the chamber staff for asking me to be here with you today. Could we have a round of applause for those fine souls? I would also like to say a big hello to that lady in the red shirt who is now moving to the rear of the space. That's my good friend Johnetta. She videos a lot of my presentations, and if you need a very brilliant videographer, she's right over there. So, if we haven't met before, let me give you a little more of an introduction. As you heard, my name is Robert Landau. I am from New York City. Guys, this is going to be a tough crowd, let me tell you. But you might be happy to know that now I make my home in the Woodlands. And, oh, now they're coming to life, yes. And my entire acting career and my entire cruise directing career, and very much now my entire speaking career, comes from this. Fill in this sentence. Ask and you will receive. Right. And that's a very real axiom if we choose to put it into action, right? As you heard, as you know, this period of time now is a very difficult one. It's a very difficult time to be a police officer. It's a very difficult time to be anything. And sometimes I get to feeling that it's a very difficult time to be a human being. But given, how we make it through any storm, and I'm going to talk about that today, is a choice. Do we go down with the ship? Do you become the stories that you hear on the news? Or do we acknowledge all that stuff? Do we sympathize with all that stuff? Do we become empathic with all that stuff? And then choose to keep moving forward? Because that is what it really means to be a human being. The ovation you gave to the officer who saved a life, that is everything. Despite all the lives that were lost, and in future events that will continue to be lost, yes, we can be there, we can offer our love, we can offer our prayers. But let's also look to the good that is happening in life too. Let's choose kinda to stick with that instead of choosing to go down with the ship. And speaking of going down with the ship, I want to share with you a time where I almost literally went down with a ship. Question for you, how many of you have cruised before?
How many what?
How many of you have cruised before? Cool. Very good. Lots of you. Well, a question that I get, because I was a cruise director for close to 10 years, 300 ports of call on close to 400 cruises. And a lot of the time, people ask me, Robert, were you ever in any life-defying situations at sea? And my answer is always this: yes. Not one, but two. The first one I actually spoke to you about years ago when I was at this event as your speaker. The second one I want to talk to you about today, because there are always life lessons to be learned in any tragic situation. Yes, it happened. It was awful that it happened. But what can we take away from that horrid situation that we can learn something from, so that the next time that happens, we'll be able to get through it a lot easier? Life will always present storms. Life is not a joyride from A to Z. The road is not a straight one like this aisle. The road kind of zigzags back and forth. And it's how you choose to manage what goes on when you're on a death-defying curve that will bring you back to front and center once again. That is what life is all about. So, one year, we were in the midst of doing a New York, Bermuda, New York cruise series. 7-day cruises out of New York City, calling the incredible islands of Bermuda. And this was our itinerary. It's idyllic. Get this. We would sail from New York City Saturday at 4. We'd go up the Hudson, past the Statue of Liberty, under the Verrazano Narrows Bridge, and we would be out in the open ocean. We would stay at sea all day Sunday, and then first thing Monday morning, you would see the incredible islands of Bermuda on the horizon. What an incredible place that is to be. But to get from where you could see those islands to the pier in downtown Hamilton, Bermuda, it takes about an hour of going through some very complicated reef structure. And the captain of the ship can't even do that. He's not allowed. Maritime law states that we have to take on a pilot captain who just knows how to get us through that. That's all he does. That's his career. And he gets us safely to the pier in Hamilton, Bermuda. We would stay alongside the pier in Hamilton Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and sail back to New York City Thursday afternoon, spend Friday at sea, arriving back from where we left at the pier in New York City Saturday morning. So, being in Bermuda all those days was incredible because you could use the ship as your hotel. And that's exactly what passengers did. That season was going along great, incredible weather, until one very defining week when the weather was not as incredible. How so? Well, let's see, this was Wednesday. Everything had been going well up till then. And I was getting shore excursions off alongside the pier, and I got a phone call to go up to the bridge immediately because the captain wanted to see me. And I get up there, and what was usual, a very jovial captain with great spirits, had a very sullen look on his face. And I said, "Captain, what is going on?" And he said, "Robert, I don't want you to panic, but here's the deal." That was the captain just now. He was checking on me. Will he please leave me alone? Let me do my thing. But anyway, he, in a very intense energy, looked at me and he said, "No, I don't want to panic you, but there is a raging, very serious hurricane in the Atlantic Ocean. We are monitoring it very carefully with the National Weather Service, and we don't think that it's going to hit Bermuda, but I just wanted you to know. So I said, great, thank you, no problem. So I decided to finally get a rest and go to my stateroom and take a nap. And as soon as my head hit the pillow, the phone rings in my cabin. And it's the captain again. And the captain really intensely says, now, Robert, I need you to report to the bridge immediately. So I get up there, and he takes me aside and he says, Robert, the hurricane has changed course, and it is coming straight for the ship in Hamilton, Bermuda. How can we get over 2,000 passengers back on board in an hour? And if you've ever been to Bermuda, you'll know that Bermuda is not just one big island. It's an archipelago of a number of islands. And so we had passengers that were visiting all those islands. So how do you get passengers back to the ship in this very intense situation? So the only thing the captain could think to do was to blow the ship's whistle, the horn, just constantly, so that word would start to spread from Bermuda Island to Bermuda Island that the MV Atlantic needed all of her passengers back on the ship now. Well, believe it or not, we got them all back, but believe it or not, it was too late to get out of Bermuda because we would still have had to go through an hour's worth of very dangerous narrows to get out into the open sea. So I think one of the worst things the captain will tell you of a cruise ship will be to weather a very serious, intense hurricane tied up alongside a pier. But this captain felt he was up to the challenge. Cruise ships have special lines, cables, that are triple fortified in that instance. So he had his officers secure the ship. I was called up to the bridge to watch this storm approach. And it was terrifying. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, everything got dark. Everything got quiet. It seemed that all of the birds and wonderful animals that populate Bermuda kind of knew to take cover. Funny how they know, isn't it? So I'm watching the wind start. And I'm watching the torrential rains pour. We've all been through hurricanes. You kind of know what that's about. But from that vantage point on the bridge, it really looked scary. I'm watching now the wind meter go back and forth between who knows how many miles per hour. And I'm also watching bicycles being blown down Front Street. It's starting to get very intense, very scary. Captain and crew very focused. And the winds were blowing the ship into the pier. So we were leaning into the pier, and that was cool. Then the eye of the storm passes, and it's like a summer day where you want to go to the beach right away, right? But what do you think, dear souls, happened next? It came back twice as fierce as it had started to pass. So now the problem was the wind was blowing the ship away from the pier. And the wind was so fierce that we started to break all of those cable lines that were securing us to the pier. And now we were docked alongside the pier in a very shallow bay that had a little island in the center of it with a house sitting on it. There was an enormous boulder that was coming out of the water by this island, and now, guess what? The ship totally broke away from the pier. The ship was out of control a big cruise ship, subject to Mother Nature's fierce winds. I think it was Hurricane Emily, if I'm not mistaken. Well, this normally calm captain totally lost it. These were Italian crew members, and boy, when Italians get worked up, that's a hurricane in and of itself, right? I mean, can you imagine how a captain feels losing control of his ship? And so I'm watching this whole horror scenario as if it is in slow motion. And I'm thinking, wow, what are we going to do? How can I, as a cruise director, the energy of the ship, keep calm and carry on? Because in the midst of disaster, if you don't keep your calm, then all is lost, right? You always have to be the captain of your ship in any storm. Because the moment you give your wheel up to somebody else to steer that ship, you're lost. You've relinquished control. So, all I could do in the midst of this panic, because now I'm watching palm trees being uprooted from the lawns of Front Street, roof shingles being blown off stores, all kinds of stuff. It was absolute mayhem. I really didn't know how we were going to get through. And it gets even better. The ship now, still out of control, slams against that boulder sticking out of the sea, and you could hear it make a gash in the ship's hull, a la Titanic. And I'm thinking, wonderful. When this ship tips over, how am I going to get all of our passengers out on the side of the ship so that we can be rescued? Funny what happens when you are in a situation like that. I don't consider myself to be a very religious person, but I'm very spiritual. And all of a sudden, in the midst of all this mayhem on the bridge, I found myself saying out loud this: love will save the day. Love will save the day. Will you say that with me? Love will save the day. And I kept saying it over and over again like a mantra. But I put my faith, I put my belief in it, and I pictured a calm situation occurring. Did I know how that was going to happen? How this storm would pass so that we would still have our lives and be able to somehow get back to New York? Funny what happened. I kept saying it. Love will save the day. Love will save the day. Love will save the day. And as I kept saying that, the winds subsided, the rains stopped, and the sun started to shine. And all of us officers on the bridge just stood there in absolute silence. The captain had the officers check to see if we were taking on water due to the slam into that boulder. And fortunately, while the hull was severely dented, there was no puncture so that water could get in. It took us a long time to get out of those narrows because now those stones and reef structure were so disturbed that they created even more of a barrier for us to get out of there. By the time we got back to New York City, one of the big newspapers in New York City, if you don't know, is the New York Post. The New York Post devoted their entire center section to our ship and its turmoil. There was an Associated Press reporter who, in shelter, was actually taking photos of the ship starting to tip over in the bay, and now it was all over the press. And I was interviewed concerning this event once I got ashore in New York City. They asked me, Mr. Landau, cruise director Landau, how did you get through this storm? And I said, you know what? Besides the valiant effort of our ship's crew, our captain who literally saved our lives, it's also an internal thing. If you expect things to change on the outside of you, I believe the only way that's going to happen is if you start to change what is on the inside of you. True change begins from within, and then you will start to see it manifest without. It does not happen the other way around, I believe. We live in a culture where we think, or we're conditioned by the media to think this way. Well, you know what? I ain't going to believe it unless I see it. But I believe it works the other way around. I believe I will not see it unless I believe it. So I said to the reporters, I said, you know what? In the midst of all this turmoil, I went within, I focused, I believed in my heart of hearts that we would not lose our lives that day, and I clung to that. Now, did me saying love will save the day over and over again actually change the weather pattern and save our lives? That's up to debate. But I do know that it helped me get through that storm. Question: what will help you get through storms? Because, I hate to say it, there's going to be plenty more of them in the future. But what I can also say is there's going to be incredible weather most of the time. It's when there is a death-defying, terrible storm at sea that we need to focus. Because if I had become the storm, if the captain had become the fear of the storm, we wouldn't have made it through. Same with you. When there's an intense storm that you are forced to deal with, please, and it's a choice, choose not to go down with your ship. Believe within your heart of hearts that you already have been given what you need and what it takes to make it through. How does a police officer get out of bed every morning and face going to work, knowing that he might not come or she might not come back home? Military, same thing. All of us, same thing. But you know what? We are here to win any race that we have been presented with. It's just a question of believing that we've already crossed the finish line before the race has begun. So this is what I tell many that I speak to every week, whether it's hospital staff, whether it's corporate staff, whether it's any staff or any church gathering or whatever. When you've been presented an impossible situation, whether it's something you see on the news or something that happens to you, you got two choices. One choice, to make it through, knowing that you will. The other is to become the energy of that negative situation and allow it to overtake you. I would choose the former instead of the latter. But life is a series of choices. Always choose the ones that feel best to you in your heart of hearts, and I guarantee it, you can make it through any storm and choose to keep calm and carry on. Thank you so much, everybody. God bless.